I'll call the meeting to order of the Economic Improvement Corporation of Kerrville. Don, would you lead us in our invocation?
Sure. Father, as we come before you today, we ask that you continue to guide us in everything we do. We ask that you bless this city, people who work here, live here. We ask that you guide us as we make decisions that impact this city. And we know that your Son died for us, and we're so grateful for that. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Ashley, do we have any visitors or citizens that want to speak?
We do online for 6B.
Okay. We want to go ahead and take that now? Or do they want to speak to that particular item?
They want to speak to that particular
Okay.
item.
But no general comments?
No, sir.
Okay, item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the regular EIC meeting held on December 14th, 2020.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes as presented.
One item, it's kind of a wordsmith thing, but in item number 5, the very last part of that, we discussed the vote. We say the motion passed 6-0, then 1 opposed. Seems to me, I'll just say the motion passed 6-1 and leave out the rest of it, other than who opposed, maybe. See what I'm saying? It said 6-0, then 1 opposed.
Okay.
So just say 6-1.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Gary, do you want to remove to approve that with the amendment?
I'll amend the motion to include the correction on item 5A.
Have a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. And carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is the KEDC update. Mr. Salinas, you going to give that? Welcome.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll start with Project Gulf. That was the code name that we had been using for the last few months as far as Gulf Avionics. That's a project that was announced last week and came out in a couple of our papers. And after a year-long search, they've decided to locate both their headquarters and their MRO here at the Kerrville Airport. They were looking at San Antonio, the Rio Grande Valley, and also at Dallas, either for a relocation or an expansion. So they ended up in Kerrville. Over the next 10 years, particular company, they're going to be creating upward about 50 jobs, paying about $75,000 in average wages. Capital investment is at $1.3 million. And the skill sets that they would be requiring for this particular company is about mid to high skill sets. So that kind of hits that, what I like to call that sweet spot as far as kids that are graduating from our local high schools and don't necessarily, or not necessarily looking to go to college or to a university, but get some training. This is exactly for them. And that also will help in retaining some of our labor and talent here in the area as well. This company, actually right before the winter blast, they settled at their space. They've got about 7,000 square feet of space at the airport here. But we've been talking to them since this summer and looking more at the big picture as far as their expansion plans. They're actually part of RBR, which is a much larger company, and they own about 6-7 different companies. They're out of St. Louis and Dallas as well. And our conversations with them has been more on the proactive side. It's like, okay, we know that, we have a good shot at getting that first component, which is Gulf Avionics. But looking out, 2 to 3 years out, how best can we accommodate 3 or 4 of their companies to come into the area? So we've had some very good discussions with them. Obviously, space is going to be one of them. Mark, myself, we've visited a few times about this project, and we've agreed that this has a potential to be the next Skymaster. Because the company has come back and said, look, 10 years out, if we're able to bring in these other companies, we could probably be at about 200 jobs. 200 jobs at $75,000 in annual wages. Killdeer, which is a Skymaster, there are 400 jobs, but about half of that amount, or a little over half of that amount. So that basically equates to another Skymaster for us. But we both agreed, city manager and myself, that this is a project that, very similar to Skymaster, is going to challenge us, and we need to really think outside the box and help and accommodate their needs here locally. Along those lines, we facilitated last month a meeting between them and Kildare as well. And there was some very interesting discussions about collaboration, between workforce, suppliers, the same vendors that they're going to be utilizing. So it was very good to be there and just kind of see those synergies being played out. And then it got to the point where they said, and I think you just mentioned this a little while ago, that if this cluster really starts to take off, which it will, now we can start talking about a collaboration between different aerospace companies in the whole country to start going to Austin and knocking on doors in DC. And that would be basically for federal contracts. So again, I mean, that's being driven here in Kerrville, which is very encouraging. Moving on to the incubator project. So the KDC, we've got a KDC appointed committee, and we met just before that winter blast. That's Mayor Blackburn, Maggie, Clint Fiore, and Todd Bach were both on our board as well. And so we're still in the research phase and the asset mapping phase. But we had some very meaningful discussions in that meeting that we had, and we've got another one coming up this week. And Clint there's a couple people that put things in perspective. One was Clint, who asked, is this an incubator or an accelerator? So an incubator is basically, well, what it says, incubate, new startups, new companies. The fail rate is usually pretty high with these companies, but that's why they're at the incubator, to get them off the ground. And then the accelerator is for existing businesses, to help them get to that next level or 2 levels up. We've been using the word entrepreneur center, and that actually covers both. And Clint kind of agreed, the committee agreed, well, if we do that, we can take a little bit from both, focus in more on the entrepreneur side. And then Maggie then said, well, it's all marketing 101. It's basically, what does a client want? So with that, we went back, and so we started incorporating into our research. Now we're doing some outreach to some local businesses, some of our stakeholders and entrepreneurs. It's kind of like, here's what we're looking to do, but we need to hear from you as well. So we're incorporating that into our SWOT analysis and our strategic planning efforts for this particular project. And again, we're meeting Wednesday, where we'll be providing some of that initial research and now really getting to the identity of this particular program. So we've already got membership, curriculum. I mean, everything's coming together nicely. Taking a step back and really looking at the big picture as it pertains to this. Again, we're in the research phase, and there's a reason for that. Then after that, we get into the resource and the funding planning. And then once we've got this strategic plan in place, now we start knocking on the doors of the EDA. Very timely, because we've been keeping track with the EDA as far as the next CARES Act funding. So there's another bill at the federal level that, if it goes through and everything so far indicates that it will, there's going to be a much bigger package coming out as far as from DC for COVID CARES Act funding, and there's going to be a specific section there for entrepreneur or incubators, accelerators. So that's what we're looking at as far as funding, which eventually will get us to an actual bricks and mortar facility a year and a half down the road. Wrapping up here, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa in a bit, who's on the line. I was up in Austin, again, right before, the Tuesday before the winter blast. Met with Texas Workforce Commissioner as far as the projects that we have, and as a result now they're working with the Gulf Avionics, our newest corporate citizen, for some training dollars for them. So we don't know what that looks like yet, but they're now working with them. And it's interesting because the Workforce Commissioner said, after I visited Kerrville a couple times, which he said, hey, I want to get back. I need another project. I'm like, hold on. I was like, I don't need more pressure now from somebody else, for projects. So he said, I've been really, when I'm out in other communities, I've been using Kerrville as an example of a rural community really utilizing workforce funds. So he was very impressed when he was in the area. So again, somebody else is telling our story which is great. Met with Tip Strategies, which is a firm out of Boston that did our stakeholder retreat almost 2 years ago. Some of you all were involved in that. So, and if you recall, that was at the time we did a 2-year roadmap to get us through the first 2 years to really work on the foundation of the organization. So we're now hopefully when they come back in the fall, you'll all be involved, and now we're going to start really looking at a 5-year outlook for organization in the community, and again, grabbing from the 2050 vision plan. The Office of the Governor, met with them, gave them the project updates from the area, got a little bit of information from incentives as far as the current legislative session, talked a little bit about the Entrepreneur Center. A couple things. One, they said, we're going to tell you right now, that plan that you have is pretty ambitious for an organization or for a community your size. We typically see those plans for mid-sized to much larger cities. To which I was like, well, that's how we roll in Kerrville, right? But the other thing was they said, okay, so once you get it off the ground, we want to be a part of that. So they've already said we're in. The other thing too was there's a prize that not a lot of entities or communities really include them with some of these small business initiatives, which is good for us. So they're going to be a part of that. And then lastly,
What will they do, Gil? What will
They,
how will they participate?
a couple of ways. One is actually access to funds at the state level for small businesses through the Entrepreneur Center. So there's one category that they have for that. And then the other one, they will make their staff available for to be either mentors or teachers in some of the sessions that we're going to be providing. So it's I mean, it's a very good, I don't want to say good deal, but yeah, it's a good deal for us.
People's money.
There's money and
Well, training, other people's money is involved.
other people's money and access to expertise to their network. And then Texas Economic Development Council, they reached out to us and they want us to be a part of a training webinar, statewide webinar, and a blog post to talk about how to respond to emergency crises and so on and so forth, and how best to really start working on building a resilient economy. And that's because they've been kind of, we're part of their network and they've seen what Kerrville's been doing. So that's happening pretty soon, and again, that's a great plug for us as well. That concludes the portion of my report. I'm going to turn it over to Teresa. I'll stay here in case there's any other questions after her report.
Gil, once you guys have your research finished on your entrepreneur project, will we get a chance to look at your findings and your plans?
Yes, and that'll be before your next board meeting.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. Yeah, that's happening pretty soon.
Well, thank you and your team for all that y'all are doing, making great headway. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Absolutely.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's the team. Yeah.
Thank you. Teresa going to join us for a report?
I think she's on.
Teresa, if you can hit *6.
I can cover a little bit about what she was going to cover, just on the surface. Okay, so here, let me proceed unless she jumps in. We've sent out a survey to our top employers, and that was after the storm hit. And that was just us being proactive. When it happened, it's like, okay, we know what's going to happen, but we need to reach out. So we called some of our employers, just like, obviously there's not much we can do, but we just want to listen. So we're there to listen. Some were okay, some were, not too happy. So what we did is now we've sent out a survey to kind of like just tell us, from your standpoint, what can we do better as a community? And then we're going to be putting that information together. And that's basically for twofold. One is for leadership, like you all. City council, when they come, is like, okay, we want to know from your top employers, local businesses. I mean, do you have that data? Well, absolutely. Here's what we found. And then the other one is, the state of Texas, and I'm sure they'll be reaching out to us now that we have a good line of communication with them, is they'll be asking too from several communities, hey, we want to hear what was the, give us a quick summary of your community, one, how they responded, and your private employers and your workforce, how they dealt with this as well. We're going to be also providing those initial results to both to the EDC board as well, council and the EIC. And I think just preliminary, very very preliminary. Some of the indicators that we got was a problem of not necessarily that they couldn't be in operation, but employees getting to their site. That was the biggest problem that we've at least complaint or observation that they've had. Let me see. The other one is there's an IT project now that and Teresa's the lead on this, that reached out to us last month, and it kind of fits us to a T. But they're looking at several communities here in the Hill Country, very similar to Kildare and Gulf. There's a tie-in to the area, and there's a want for them to be here, but it doesn't mean that they're coming in. Job-wise, I think it's at about 40 jobs, but they pay closer to the $100,000 range as far as what those jobs entail. They need about a 20,000 square foot facility. The beauty of those projects, in addition to the jobs and the impact that they're going to have that way, is the energy consumption. So those are, the utility providers become your best friends because they come in and they're very similar to data centers. It's not a data center, it's more on the IT side. But that's also good for us because, when you have a municipal utility, then really everything you start to see more of that money coming back to the community. And lastly, there is being up at the governor's office a couple weeks ago, they've given us an opportunity to be part of I'm going to butcher this, but I think it's a Tokyo Metro Texas partnership, something like that. So Tokyo has reached out to the state of Texas and said, hey, we want to work with you all, partner with you all to start working with mid-sized communities. I mean, the larger communities, the Houstons, the Austins, the Dallases, San Antonios, I mean, they come here all the time, but we now want to start getting to some of those other level communities. I'm glad they thought of us. So we would be a part of that as far as it's just mainly on the marketing side and developing those relationships with them. And this goes back to what San Antonio did in the early 1980s when they were courting, you believe it or not, they were courting Toyota way back. Well, you were probably involved with that. Way back then. And 20 plus, 30 years later, they got Toyota. But that bridge that they built with Japan is still, it's been very fruitful for them. And now we get the trickle down effect. So we've been invited. So that concludes the part of her report. I think she had more, but that's in a nutshell where we're at.
Been busy.
Congratulations on your award.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
Oh.
Yes. Thanks. Yeah,
I
we're
was
busy.
asking Gil what he was this morning at the board meeting, what do you do in your spare time? Because they have really been hitting it on all cylinders.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Thank you very much, Gil.
thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 5B, the project status update. Mr. Hoppy provided a project update in the packet. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the current projects that we have on the board?
Okay.
Looks like we're wrapping up a lot of them.
We are, yeah, we're, been starting others, like the concept study, so it's,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it works, right? We wrap some up and move on to the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dozier? Our next item on the agenda is the monthly financial report.
All right, good afternoon. I go through, seems like a long time ago, but we're actually still on the January report. So I'm going to go through financial information for the month of January. And I'm going to start with our statement of activities, and I'm looking at the second column over that's the current period, and we're going to talk specifically about the month of January. So sales tax of $335,000, And then on the expenditure side, we only had just the normal recurring monthly expenditures in the month of January. So payments for administrative services, a quarterly payment to KEDC, and then the monthly debt service payments. So we didn't have any project payments that occurred in the month of January. And looking at, we'll get into sales tax a little bit more in depth in another slide, but looking at our cash flow forecast, things continue to just improve because sales tax continues to come in better than anticipated. So this cash flow forecast that goes out through the end of September has us at, a low balance of 2.7 million, but not dropping below that with the current projects. And you'll notice there under the projects that Thompson Drive project for the landing, we did pay out that $283,000 for the last payment on that project during the month of February. So you'll see that in your February financial statements next month. And then on this financial analysis page, I wanted to hit a few highlights here. So over on the right side, sales tax revenue analysis. Sales tax just continues extremely strong. And we continue to see that sales tax categories are led by retail and manufacturing, much better than anticipated performance in both of those categories. On the retail side, just more of the same story, continued regional retail, and then very strong online sales as well. And then very strong on the manufacturing side. So yeah, it's kind of incredible that budget to actual 20% better than budget right now. And just to give you a little preview, so we have received our payment for February, and you may have already seen this in the paper and seen it discussed a little bit, but our February payment that represents sales that actually took place in December. February is always our biggest month. But the EIC portion was $433,000, and so that's our largest sales tax payment that the city's ever received. So outstanding performance there. And we'll get the March results next week. And then looking at the project analysis at the top left corner there, so that Thompson Drive partners that I just referred to, when you see this updated next month, you'll see that there's no remaining funding left there and that all of that has been paid. The airport projects are, we've paid what they're working on currently, so there's no impending expenditures there, or at least not for a little while. And then Doyle will be giving you an update, but they've had a little bit of a lull in their payments until their construction really gets underway. And then there's still a little bit left on the Kildare piece as well. The cash analysis at the bottom left-hand corner, so 2.9 million at the end of January, end of February, it's actually gone up a little bit to just over 2.9 million in the cash balance. And the only disappointing news in this financial analysis is our interest rates. So we are continuing to keep things liquid, and we're EIC has their money invested in a investment pool, but it's earning currently just under 9 basis points. So just for reference, 100 basis points is 1%, so this is less than 0.1% on the interest. So those are my highlights for the month. Any questions? All right, and also in your packet this month, I attached some just debt information. It's just kind of general, basic background kind of information that we discussed a little bit and had been requested a couple of months ago. So happy to answer any questions on that if anyone has any debt questions. All right, thank you very much.
That was a good breakdown of how our debt can be consolidated and so forth. It was a good breakdown.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the application for funding from the Kerrville Christmas Lighting Corporation to enhance electrical infrastructure on Tranquility Island. Good afternoon, Mr. Eichner.
Good afternoon, George Eichner, and on behalf of I'm president of the Kerrville Christmas Lighting Corporation Board of Directors, and on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for considering our request and giving us the opportunity to come talk to you about it this afternoon. Let me get the clicker. Oh, no. Now, I promise not to read all the information that I gave you in the handout. But I do want to touch on a little bit about the organization, what we accomplished this last year, and what we intend to accomplish this year. The core value of the Christmas Lighting, KCLC, Kerrville Christmas Lighting Corporation, or KCLC, has always been to brighten the holidays. And in fact, they have done that, decorating the courthouse for 23 years. When there was talk of disbanding the organization, a group of us got together to see if we couldn't repurpose it and continue the legacy that they started. Because after all, it was a viable 501c3 organization that didn't have any baggage. It was current in all respects. And most importantly, it would give us the opportunity to solicit and receive donations from virtually anybody. So in February last year, we did reorganize it. And unlike the old KCLC, that not only raised money, bought the decorations, they also furnished the labor to put them up and down. The new KCLC is strictly a fundraising organization with the purpose of supporting holiday lighting initiatives in the greater Kerrville area. One thing I want to point out about our board members is that they're all volunteers. You know, given our mission that we're out hat in hand asking for money, that all these folks volunteered to serve. In fact, several asked me if they could help. One of the things that we added to the bylaws was the addition of the liaison members, and we have 3 of our liaison members here tonight, which shows that they're more than just names on paper. But the main reason we added these folks was to make sure that we didn't operate in a vacuum, and that we had we're communicating and coordinating with the people that we needed to communicate and coordinate with. So anyhow, out of order. Okay, pretend this is the next slide that says, that's right. My bad, sorry about that. So in February, we reorganized. We had a champagne toast. We were all set to hit the ground running. And then COVID hit, and then of course the economic downturn. And so we figured that we were lost for 2020. But in September, we got together and figured that 2020 was turning out to be such a bummer year that we had to do something to brighten the holidays. And so we picked up on Charlie McElveen's idea to put Christmas ornaments up and down the City Baker corridor from I-10 all the way across the bridge over the Guadalupe River. And then in October, when the holiday lighting parade was canceled along with the courthouse lighting ceremony, we got together again and did a virtual lighting ceremony. And we thought this was very successful. We had over 1,900 views on our Facebook page and untold numbers of views on the city's channel 2 that helped with it. One of the reasons I put this in here was just to give you an idea of the broad base of support we received. The best thing about this list of people is that we didn't have to do any convincing. We didn't have to do any sales. That we struck a chord with the community, and these people jumped on board, and in 22 days we raised over $40,000. And so that's one of the reasons why we're enthusiastic about what we're proposing to use today, is that there's a mood out there that we need to Kerrville needs to get on board with some decorations and things of that nature. This is a shot of the decorations we put up, and when they're 14 feet up in the air, they don't look that big, but they really are a reasonable decoration. And then, of course, with our inaugural Christmas lighting, we had Aaron Yates and his company just did a phenomenal job putting this together, and we even had a visit from Santa Claus. So, anyhow, if you were to ask what the real purpose of KCLC is, I would say is probably to energize the community and to really get a demonstration and a virtual, not virtual, but a real spirit of Christmas in the air, like all the surrounding towns have around here. What we hope to accomplish is to get maximum community involvement and commitment in what we're talking about here. That if we can get a matching grant from EIC combined with the success we've had in our previous things, that we think this is going to be a slam dunk and that we'll be able to get this accomplished. We'd like to have you think of it as a private-public partnership, much the same as the Shriner University River Trail extension. That it's something that's good for everybody. We hope to raise the money within 60 to 90 days so that we can have a contract let by the 1st of September and have the electrical grid in place for Christmas this year. Now, one of the things I didn't put in your packet was this idea. I want to let you know that this wasn't a group of us sitting around drinking a glass of wine thinking, hey, I got this great idea for us, but this is an initiative that the City Parks and Recreation came up with 2 years ago in 2019 to light the island, and it was a fantastic success. Spectacular lighting of the trees, and our board unanimously agreed that this was a project that ought to be supported and completed, and so we adopted it as our project. And so it's a support of the parks in the city that we are the enabler to make this happen. This next two slides is just to give you an idea that this is not just some flimsy project, that is well designed by an electrical engineer. It takes into account the floodplain, has a scope of the kind of parts you need to make it happen, and so that it's a real deal, and not something that just cooked up by an ad hoc committee of people.
Could you go back to the slide before?
You bet.
I hadn't finished reading. I'm a little slow reader.
I thought you would do your homework and you'd have it already done. But
Okay. That's fine. Okay, go
we
ahead.
good? All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you got any questions or I'm going too fast, holler. Now, I put this slide up just to let you know that it's doable. If we were to give out city or Christmas Spirit Awards, the first one would be to the old KCLC board that did the decorating for the 23 years, but the second one would be to the Kirk County Women's Chamber, is that they've been really champions and warriors of Christmas decorations, and since 2012 have been putting up decorations on Tranquility Island, and they were the ones that were responsible for putting the 60 amp service in coordination with the city. But the point is that it is doable. It crosses the bridge. It's underneath the bridge between the library and Tranquility Island, but it's withstood all the floods we've had, and so what we're talking about is entirely possible. Now, the exciting part is the capability and the capacity that this gives. Is that with a electrical grid of a 200 amp service, it enables us to do a lot of things. Actually, it enables the Parks and Rec to do a lot of things. But the initial thing after this is in is to light up 105 cypress trees. And I got a couple of pictures later on, but the little insert in the corner shows you that they were able to light about 25 trees. And if you can imagine 105 trees, that's the final goal. The border of the Guadalupe River from Francisco Limas Bridge all the way to the end of Tranquility Island, closest to the Sidney Baker Bridge. Now, one of the neat things about this that supports our position is that it supports the 2050 plan. I mean, essentially what we're proposing fulfills the guiding principle here for the downtown revitalization. And of course, when you got electrical capability down there, you can develop all kinds of programs and people-friendly events and activities for families. And two things on this: of course, you can provide more recreational amenities, but the thing I appreciate is that it supports innovative funding, and that's kind of what we're asking you to do, is to help us with innovative funding. The future possibilities are virtually unlimited. As I mentioned, there are programmable LED lights, floodlights, and so, like for example, the 4th of July, you could have red, white, and blue. For Valentine's Day, maybe pink. But it gives you a chance to really make Tranquility Island into a happening place. These are some of the things that the City Parks and Rec would like to, say maybe a 10-year plan, that you'd have a Christmas destination down there, so that people, when they, instead of going to Johnson City and Fredericksburg and Marble Falls will come to Kerrville for a spectacular Christmas experience or a spectacular 4th of July experience. These next couple pictures, this is what I refer to as kind of the tip of the iceberg. This is about 25 trees, but if you can imagine 105 trees decorated like this, and then plus all the things that might happen underneath those trees, that it's I mean, it's really something, and it's one of the reasons we're excited about this. You get an aerial view of this with the river behind it. The reflection in the water is just amazing. It really is. But this is a picture from 2 years ago where we had to manufacture snow as opposed to have it fall from the heavens. But it gives you an idea. This is a family-friendly thing that's already in being and that can be further expanded. And then, of course, with for youth events, we even had Santa's elves a couple of years ago. So that concludes my pitch. Maybe a little fast. I apologize for talking fast, but I didn't want to take up too much of your time. But if you have any questions, I got Mike here. Although K-Pub is not involved, except as a advisory capacity, Mike is here to talk about that. Ashley can answer questions, and Julie can maybe give you an impact on the CBB part of it.
One question I have is once you have the infrastructure in place to be able to light all this, who's responsible for actually making it happen?
The city. I don't know. You want
Parks and Rec Department does?
So this is just an infrastructure expense.
Yes, sir.
Pull K-Pub, pull the power in there so you have all the power you need.
Well, no, it'd be a private contractor that'll. I don't know. Ashley, you want to talk to this maybe?
Afternoon. Yes, so we are utilizing an electrical engineer to design the scope of this project for us, and then we'll bid it out. And then the successful vendor will be actually designing and execute the project for us.
We envision this to be a three-way partnership, very similar to what we did at River Trail Extension to Shriners. You remember Shriners was a partial funding partner, EIC was a partial funding partner, and then essentially, once we designed and bid the project, the city completed the construction of that project. So very similar in that way. You've got an entity that would be doing fundraising for the matching grant portion of the EIC funds, and then we would bid it.
I mean, once it's actually constructed, does Parks and Recs have the capacity to be able to, and the manpower to be able to install all that's anticipated?
Yes, we do. We're actually already fabricating the light holders in-house. That's something we've been doing in the off-season in preparation of this, so we're prepared to, as soon as we have the infrastructure in place, to execute it and get them in the trees.
And what about the cost of the actual lights and other infrastructure that would is that already in play?
Yes, that's something that we budgeted for. That's a very minimal cost. The lights aren't actually that expensive. The biggest cost is the infrastructure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ashley. Any other questions?
Is it foreseen that if an individual or company or another organization wanted to have a function down there, that they would have to contract with the city for services and pay their share of the electricity for that night and that type of thing?
That's something that we would manage through a special event application, and we'd evaluate it and get any appropriate fees that they would need to pay, and we would pass that along to them.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, next item on the agenda is the requested amendment to the Economic Development Grant Agreement between the Doyle School Community Center and the City of Kerrville, Texas Economic Improvement Corporation.
So is there any action coming out of the previous item?
I saw that was on our,
We need to do we need to move that we push that till after executive session?
You can have that as an executive session discussion.
I'd like to have that as a.
that's what I was
I would
anticipating,
like to have that as a part of our executive.
since that was on our executive session agenda.
No, sir.
Hi there.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for the support that y'all have given us already at Doyle. You know, it's like when I was sitting here reflecting on the last time I sat over here, it was like right before COVID hit, and everything just went crazy. And you know, the benefit of the Build Health Grant and everything that's happening at Doyle is that because COVID was hitting at the time that we were able to gain y'all's support, the staff went straight into COVID relief for our neighborhood. And so at the time that they needed us most, we were there. And knowing that we could also look forward to potentially, or look forward to renovating our facility. We've, in the time since I last talked to you, we have weekly food distribution. We've partnered with Diedert Center for Meals on Wheels. We've just done all, the staff, I shouldn't even say we, has really done a great job in creating what we thought was a really good hub for this community into a really great hub for the community, because it has really served in a time of need beyond what we could have done without the attention and the opportunities that y'all support has given us. So thank you for that. Alongside the services that we've been providing, we've been working on the renovation since I last saw you. The surprises that are always come up in construction, I suppose. The biggest surprise and the biggest expense that was totally unexpected was the expense for the temporary buildings and what it took to hook those up to utilities and such. It was quite a bit over budget. We had already realized we needed to make some concessions on the project before we started, and sorry, I should be clicking. And so as the drawings were completed in kind of the June to September period, we realized that we needed to cut back a little bit on possibly on the kitchen, with the idea that if we got additional funding from outside, that we could we could make the kitchen be a commercial kitchen like we had intended. We figure if we have a commercial kitchen, we can provide much more for our neighborhood as far as instructional time to learn healthy cooking, but then also to provide a place for gathering for meals and such, as community is so important. In October, when we did the pre-bid meetings, we had already decided on several ad alternatives. We had put the kitchen, the complete kitchen, as an ad alternative. We had also put some of the parking lot construction as an ad alternative, and then some more minor things, a sidewalk along the back of the building. So we had already started kind of, lowering our bar just a little bit so we wouldn't have to sacrifice the entire project. In November, we did have two different companies give us bids, and they were within about $5,000 of each other. So we felt like they were pretty solid bids. Some of their ad alternatives, that's where the difference was, and so we went with Zuber Construction and began work on figuring out how we could afford what we wanted, essentially. Let's see. So I'm sorry. We also had some large windows in the, I don't know how many of y'all remember the original building, but you used to go outside when you exited the east end of the building to get into the little dining area. That used to be an outdoor sidewalk. It was closed in at one point. We wanted to make those big arches into windows. That we've given up. We've kind of, some of the things that we had chosen for ceiling tiles and flooring to make it more historical seeming, we've adjusted a bit. So we've been making those kinds of decisions as we've gone. However, the cost is still not where we need it to be for the money that we have in hand and that we're hoping to raise. The pandemic, of course, everyone, I hesitate to blame anything on COVID because it seems like everything gets blamed on COVID. But it did slow us down quite a bit, which has also created several more months of temporary building rental, which is a little over $4,000 a month. So that's added up. We found that our engineering plans were probably not as complete as we needed to have the best, best guess, I guess, best knowledge of what the final project was going to cost. And then the asbestos abatement, that's always kind of you just don't know what's in there. And a lot of the renovation was done. We felt like a lot of the renovation that the KISD did over the years was kind of past that asbestos use time. And as it turns out, there's a lot of glue in there that is asbestos. We're doing the abatement right now, and that cost has just been a bit higher than we expected. So on behalf of the board of directors, I'd just like to request an amendment for an additional $150,000 to what you've already been able to support us in order to meet the budget where it is. We do have a new development committee on the board, which I'm really happy about, of some folks that have a little bit more knowledge of larger fundraising than we've had in the past. And so we still have a lot of desire to raise the extra kitchen money and those kinds of things to be able to have the product that we had hoped for. So the capital campaign will be continuing as we go, but in order to be certain of our construction costs being met, we feel that it was important to come back and ask if you could amend our original agreement by $150,000. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, does the additional 150 get you guys to your contract amount with Zuber?
It does. And pay, with the temporary buildings in there, yes.
Is that contract on a fixed price basis, or is it cost plus?
It is, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we're meeting every other week and making adjustments. He knows that we have a certain budget. I mean, so I guess it's a fixed.
I mean, do you have like a maximum cost amount?
Yeah.
Okay, our original grant to y'all was 500?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
But we made an adjustment to it.
You did.
Yeah, their original request was 400, and then y'all made an adjustment to
Okay.
500.
To the 500.
Yeah.
And then the other ad alternates, what's the total cost of those?
The kitchen is an additional 55,000, and we have a funder for that right now. I can't state it yet. We don't have the permission from the funder to say their name yet, but we do have that in the pocket. The parking lot, the parking lot is not that critical because the current parking lot we have meets all of the codes necessary. But that was, I want to say it was $27,000 to have the west parking lot and completely repave the east. I believe that's correct.
So I'm not clear.
Okay.
It's 150 to bring your project complete,
Yes.
but not with these additional.
But not with the ad alternatives.
Ad alternatives are out of this.
Correct.
Bring it to what you've cut the project down to a certain
Correct.
capacity. The
Correct.
stuff that you've removed from the project has already been taken care of.
Yes.
This is what you're trying to satisfy.
Yes.
Have you looked outside to other, you said you got somebody going to help you with the kitchen, so you've got some direct contributions towards,
Right. And that what they're
is that
giving
what you're
us.
trying to do, is get direct
Yes.
contributions? Or
Yes. What the other funder's giving us is the kitchen plus. So it's actually 100,000. The kitchen's only about 55,000. So it's helping with the total cost.
Is that additional money that's not being spent on the kitchen, is that applied to your construction budget?
It would, oh gosh, I'm getting myself confused. It would, there was a portion of the money that the Build Health grant was supposed to raise, and it did not raise that. That was 90,000. And so when I was standing here last March, we were counting on that 90,000. That has not been raised. So the grant that I'm talking about would fill that
Portion of
and,
that.
and round us out so that the, kind of the bare minimum project is guaranteed. Does that make sense?
And that's the Zuber
That's for the Zuber cost, yes.
contract.
There was some federal money you were going to get for the health program. That's outside this.
Correct, and that's all programmatic now.
That's all program, outside of this.
Right.
Nothing hard, no bricks and mortar in that.
There was that grant was, it wasn't federal, it was a national grant, but not federal per se. There was still money left for Build Health, for the Hope for Health to raise, and that money did not get raised. And so one of the things we did to make it so that we were sure that we could continue to provide the services is our program manager was no longer employed by us as of November 1st. We did not replace that position to try to make up some of that money that we were behind because the money hadn't been raised. I've been filling that position as a volunteer program manager. So that might account for my blithering a little bit, as I'm just a little bit overwhelmed
Which hat to wear.
by my responsibilities.
So this additional 150 will allow you to complete the structure minus the enhanced kitchen
Correct.
that you, hopefully someone else is gonna
Yes.
provide you funds to
Correct.
do,
Correct.
minus the parking lot.
Minus the parking lot, minus the windows, and
Tiles, all that.
just a more basic ceiling and tile choice.
But it's still gonna give you a facility that you need to provide the services to the community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So is it fair to say your original design may have been too expensive, or it's just turned to be too expensive?
It did.
And so you've downed it.
When Peter Lewis originally kind of, we thought through it, and when I say original, I'm talking, this was a decade in the making. We didn't believe that we would need the type 1 vent hood, the big commercial kitchen, and now in 2021, that is what's required, and that was a huge expense.
Plus, in talking to Rustin, because of COVID, prices have increased.
Oh, yeah, material
significantly.
costs have gone like this.
Right.
Well, that's somewhat my concern is that 6 months from now, are we gonna have enough money with, I understand and I appreciate you running it tight and
Right.
cost control.
But you're behind the curve all the time.
I know, but we started at 400 and now we're at 650.
That's a big difference.
I see, is that right?
Big difference.
It is a big difference.
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you all. I
Thank
appreciate
you
your
very
time.
much.
Thank you.
I'd also request that this be put into executive session.
Yep, I think we have it on our agenda for there.
We do have 3 speakers
Okay.
that wish to speak. Gilbert Pies. He's with the Doyle School community.
Okay. Gilbert, are you with us?
Hello?
Gilbert?
Had him for a second.
Mr. Pies, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm sorry for whatever reason, the last part of Kay's presentation for me, I didn't have any volume for that, but I did want to say I'm a board member of the Doyle School Community Center for the past 7 years, and we are doing some tremendous work over there. Over the past year and a half, I've seen some tremendous changes going on there, and if we could continue to get your support on the things going on over there, it would be tremendously appreciated. We have been able to really help our community members in a wonderful way. We're helping them with medical needs and food and community activities. And even with COVID going on, we're still able to help people. And of course, we've been doing many things over there for years that most people haven't heard of, but we continue to provide an outlet for the neighborhood to enjoy their neighbors, get to know people, and attain services. And if we could just get your help to continue doing what we're doing and finishing our renovations, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert.
All right, Clifton Pfeiffer. If you'll press *6.
Hello?
You're there.
Hello?
Go ahead.
We can hear you, Clifton.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Mr. Pfeiffer, go ahead.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Clifton Pfeiffer. I just want to thank you for the support that you've given to Doll. It's been so much, and it's been abundantly. But unfortunately, there's still a need for help. I think as the speaker spoke before me, and she spoke on the things that the dog community has been doing to enrich and enhance the community. And it's just that we need just a little bit more help to continue doing that. And we certainly hope that you take us into consideration. And at the end of the day, you find it in your hearts and your minds to help out as much as you can. Just, again, thank you for what you've already done.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Delane Sigerman.
Ms. Sigerman, go ahead.
Ms. Sigerman, you may want to press *6 to unmute yourself.
Delane, are you with us?
There's a delay. We want to give it a second.
It's showing that she is connected.
Okay.
Tell you what, let's go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, and if, let's let Delane know that if she can connect, we'll pick back up on item 6B and her comments after we review item 6C. Any objection to that?
Good idea.
Item 6C is review the payment terms for the loan agreement and promissory note between Kerrville Public Utility Board and the City of Kerrville.
All right, this is something that we've talked about previously and y'all had asked to be put on the agenda. At your spot, you'll see a paper that looks like this. This is the amortization schedule for this loan with KPUB. You may remember it's a 4-year term, 2% interest rate. And the way that the loan is structured, it's a balloon payment of $1 million in 2024. But the way the loan agreement is written, we have the option to, EIC has the option to prepay at any time without any penalties or anything like that for prepayment. So the first payment is due on March 15th. And that's an interest-only payment of $10,000. But we'd like to the board to discuss potentially prepaying more than that. And there are some recommendations that that EIC consider repaying the entire amount, the entire $1 million on March 15th. That would benefit KPUB and would also save a little bit of, interest expense to EIC. And it also leaves EIC with a healthy cash balance of, 1.8, 1.9 million left. And anything else to add?
Yeah,
Okay.
because of the current situation that KPUB is dealing with, it would give them a little breathing room in terms of cost of natural gas, if that becomes a concern for them. It's a very volatile issue, and the council is going to discuss that some more on Thursday with the KPUB board. And there's lots of options still on the table, but this would give some more flexibility to KPUB if needed.
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward as far as what we've been discussing before the ice storm. We've been discussing the idea of repaying this loan because your interest rates, what you're getting, your interest rates this is a lot more, this is twice the cost. So we have the money. So I think, I did want to pay it earlier, but I'm in favor of paying it off, to tell you the truth. I think our cash position is pretty strong. I mean, I don't see any reason not to do it.
I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I'm not a big debt guy anyway. We talked about that previously, and the consideration was keeping our powder dry in case the other project came along. But I think with the current situation and the need, if we can support KPUB in this and take that interest ourselves, I'd certainly be in favor of moving forward with it also.
Well, we've seen sales tax come in pretty aggressively, so I think that part's a no-brainer. But if we need to get more powder, there's other ways of getting money. So we need to make a motion, or what do we need to do on this? I'll make that motion. We pay off KPUB effective. When do you want the money, Mike? Just kidding.
Would be effective March 15th.
March 15th. Yeah, pay the interest.
I'll second that motion.
We have a little more discussion on that. Who's to say how sales tax are still gonna run, but if they continue running at 20%, that'd be $750,000 more than what we had budgeted for the year. So we clearly, I think, have room to pay part of this, all of this, and then have some cash to consider this new request from Doyle Center and not really hurt where we thought we're going to be at the end of the year anyway on our cash, what we had budgeted for, because we're clearly getting more in than we thought. I certainly want to help KPUB. They've been good to us, but if we're trying to keep, in my mind, keep our cash along where we'd budgeted, I think we could probably do that if we paid $500,000. And if we want to do the 150 with Doyle, that gives us cash there to do that too, and still end up here kind of where we had budgeted the year in cash. Now, do we have a use for that other money? No, I don't know. We don't know they have one now, unless something that we don't know about, or I don't know about anyway, that's coming down the pipe that may come in here in the next 3 or 4 months that we're going to need $500,000 for this or $500,000 for that, or a request for that kind of money. I don't have any idea what's out there. Maybe someone else on the board does, but I certainly don't. So
only what Gil has told us today.
Yes. I would say there's not an immediate need, but there sure are a lot of dogs sniffing around us right now. I'm serious. I mean, this whole killdeer and everything else has started kind of a landslide. So it's not that I don't think we ought to pay it off, but I think good things are going to happen soon, and that's going to require some money. So
Let me make sure I
as
understand
long as we can get other money, I'm all for it.
our baseline. So we've got about $2.8 million as of the end of, almost 2.9 as of the end of January. We've got remaining funding of about $1.2 million. If we pay off the $1 million loan, that gets us to about 600-ish in cash remaining?
Okay, so a couple of things.
Wait a minute.
Okay, so, at the end of February, the cash balance is 2,903,000, so, 2.9 million. And then as far as those additional projects go, and EA, feel free to jump in here, but it sounds like that airport project, is not gonna require funding, anytime in the next 6 months or the remainder of this fiscal year.
I don't believe.
So it looks, so there is, over $300,000 left on that project, but it doesn't look like we're gonna be,
Needing that, we won't need
needing
that.
that
We won't
anytime
need that
soon.
money.
Right. This 2.9 million that I, just referenced at the end of February, that's after Thompson Drive has been paid. So Thompson Drive is done. The Killdeer, about 275 left. Any comments on, how quickly that would happen?
It's gonna be later, it's being pushed back, isn't it?
They've started to hire people, and we've worked on the water and sewer. We've now annexed it, zoned it, platted it. So I expect they'll get started up, my guess is within 3 to 6 months,
Well, they'll start construction then,
renovations.
renovation.
So it looks like the most immediate funding will be the remainder of the Doyle School that's already been committed. So, right now that's at a little under 350,000 left there. So if we take that out of the 2.9, that gets us to 2.55. And then, it does.
You put the
depend on-
airport back in, and have you put the 443 that's coming in next month, is that in there?
Yes, so the 2.9 million
Counts
is
the
the
4.
end of February, so that has February sales tax.
Oh, it does have the
And then that
443.
has Thompson Drive taken out of it.
So if you take the 2.9 and take out the Dole School and Killdeer and the $1 million repayment, that would put us at about $1,276,000 is my napkin
Yes, yeah, I
sketch.
just got, 1,280,000, yeah.
And that's without any other future sales tax.
Correct.
Right, and that's if, sales tax came in at budget rather than above.
My question for the board is I think it makes sense while we have the cash to eliminate the debt. What is the board's appetite for potentially considering debt if another project comes along and we're not in the cash position to be able to fund it?
Well, it's like any other project, it has to stand on its own 2 legs, and if it can stand and it looks financially viable, I'm not opposed to debt.
More viable, it's gonna cost more than 2%.
Yeah.
Yes, it might.
Well, the other thing
Yeah, it
too,
is.
keep in mind, for these deals to mature, it will take months. And then oftentimes your payout can be over multiple years, not just all up front.
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is if there's any, generalized aversion to all debt among anybody on the board.
That's what I was
That
looking
would
for
affect, that
too.
would affect my decision to
Absolutely.
want.
Me too.
Absolutely not. I think every project has to be looked at independently, and if it's a viable project and it makes sense financially for us to, borrow some amount of money to do that, then I don't have any issue with that. Again, I can't say, sure, I'm happy to borrow
No, I
money,
understand that, but not all projects have an economic component to them necessarily. I mean, we look at stuff like Killdeer that has an economic component, but we also look at stuff that doesn't necessarily have an economic component. And the two that were presented here today are kind of fit that same framework. So I just want to make sure there's, at least from my standpoint, that the board has a willingness and openness to consider debt on future projects. Obviously, each one has to be looked on its own merits, but I think I'll answer my question. All right, we have a motion and a
But-
second.
Let me just say that we've also got, you're talking about $1 million here, we've added, which we've yet to discuss, but we've got 150 at Doyle, you've got 100 for the Christmas tree lighting. So we're talking about $1.25 million of our cash we're talking about spending today. And I look at this, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but on this cash flow forecast, we're showing after all the commitments we've got, you know, whether they get paid or not, right now in our books, we're projecting a $3.2 million balance at the end of the fiscal year 21. And that's before any more increase in sales tax. But as we sit here today, we're talking about 3.2 million. Of that amount, we've got $1,250,000 committed. I don't know when it's gonna pay. We got $1,250,000 committed of that amount for our schedule and our financials, which gives us $2 million, what I consider cash we could spend today, tomorrow, whenever, and and not be, and still have cash. So we clearly have the cash to do all these things. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just questioning, do we want to do it all today? Could not knowing, as Maggie said, there's some dogs out there, so I just hate for us to be in a situation if we did do this and we needed, and maybe we're not gonna need it until after next fiscal year, I don't know. That, you know, we're gonna put ourselves in a position for a little while anyway, that we're not gonna be able to do anything immediately that we might need, so that's,
And
I'm
yeah,
not opposed to paying it all off.
No, and I think I would feel differently about it if I thought there was imminent projects coming in the next 3 to 4 months. But again, I think through the pandemic and these economic times, I'm not hearing of anything that's knocking on the door. I know there's, as you say, there's people out there looking and considering. And I think what the point Mark was making, even if they showed up next month, it's probably 5, 6, 7, 8 months before we're gonna get a request from them, by the time we get through all the wheels that have to go round and round in order to make it happen.
So it's really a timing issue.
Yeah, I think it comes at a good time for us, actually. That's my personal.
You know, as prices continue to rise, sales tax rises right with it. So we get all the benefits of rising prices, even though the Doyle Center is suffering from rising prices. We don't necessarily suffer from that. We benefit from it.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Cassie, did we get Delane on the line?
Delane, are you with us?
It does still show that she's connected, and I went ahead and emailed her also, but I have not gotten a response.
Shelley, ask her to hit *6.
Delane, can you hit *6, please? It shows that she is unmuted.
I guess that she was speaking in favor of it.
Be a good guess.
She's on the board.
I would think so.
She's on the board.
I know.
Yeah.
You on the board? Dead giveaway.
Delane, are you on the line?
You know, I remember the days when they actually showed up to speak to us.
You're gonna lose that memory soon.
Yeah.
Does council meetings go like this too?
No.
Usually do pretty good with council.
The call-ins?
All right, I think we're gonna have to call it. Our next item is the executive session. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session under section 551, 071, 073, 072, 076, 074. Am I missing any? Yes. 087.
Motion?
Limited to 071, 087, and 072.
Okay. 071,
Right.
087, and 072. Got it.
I second the motion.
All right, it's 5:15. We will adjourn to executive session. 5:43, we're out of executive session. And we're going to return to item 6B on the agenda regarding the requested amendment to the EIC grant for Dole Community Center. And we had some trouble connecting with Delane Sigerman, and she has provided some written comments, which Kesha's going to read to all of us.
Okay, this is from Delane Sigerman. I believe in the Doyle community and the Doyle School and its rich history and their desire to make where they live a great place. I believe that this amount requested of the EIC would go a long way in accomplishing their needs and desires, as well as a good investment in our entire city. I witnessed this community helping everyone in our city through COVID and this past winter storm. This new building will be such an asset to continue the good works. Thank you, Delane Sigerman.
All right, we've got a couple of matters to address. Is there a motion to address anything with regard to the application for funding for the Kerrville Christmas Lighting Corporation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we consider a funding agreement at our next meeting and have the appropriate public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
Do we need to state the amount?
We can state the amount. It's for $100,000 to be matched by an equal amount of money raised from private sources.
Okay.
Second.
Our second, Carrie. All those in favor, please designate your approval by raising your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. All right, our next item for consideration is the requested amendment to the Economic Development Grant Agreement between the Dole School Community Center and the City of Kerrville, Texas EIC.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that, to approve the request for, to amend the agreement to provide an additional $150,000 to the Doyle Community Center. But I would also like for the motion to state that with this additional funding, it should be understood that there is going to be no further modification of the funding agreement. Basically, we're done.
Okay. A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion on that item? All right, if you'll please designate by raising your right hand if you approve. Motion carries 5-0. Do we have any items for future agendas that anybody'd like to include? Okay, none. Any announcements? None, then we are adjourned.